It's springtime. It's almost springtime. In my mind, it is, and by the time this airs, it will be. But it's a season of just water problems, and more specific when it comes to roofs. I'm realizing in these recent years that when you have a leak in a roof or in your ceiling, or you have a wet spot in your ceiling, majority of the time, it's not because you have a bad roof. There's so many other things that play into why you have water infiltration to your unit. Some of the things, gutters being clogged, or a chimney not being tuck pointed, where water is getting into the chimney and it's going around the flue and coming into your ceiling. Vents not being sealed. So all those little vents that stick up on the roof, they usually have tar around them. Same with your chimney. And if that's getting loose and water's getting up and under it. We talked about recently ice damming. Ice damming has pushed some of our roof lines up in this past winter. So now there's a little gap between your actual roof line and the shingles. So that's also a problem for animals too, but that's a different conversation. But coping, a lot for our flat roofs, some of these roofs have puddling effects, and that eventually will wear and get water coming through. Also coping, your coping is supposed to sit on top of your roof line. So if your coping is missing or your coping is broken and your roof line has kind of fallen down, now that brick at the top of your flat roof is now exposed as well too. So tuck pointing is the other thing. A lot of times you see that top 3 or 4 feet on your brick buildings, that's all the tuck pointing is all jacked up. Water's getting in there and it's going somewhere. So just keep those things in mind. There's usually a solution for water issues that doesn't have to do with replacing roof. There are bad roofs, don't get me wrong, but many more years I get behind me, the more I realize these are usually not actual roof issues. Yep.
Just in general, that proactiveness, right? Just try to get out in front of as much as you can.
Yeah, I think there's a value too when you're buying a building. So if everyone else thinks that this roof needs to be ripped off, but you're smart enough to do your due diligence and realize that the left side of this building needs $3,000 worth of tuck pointing. Now you might be able to pay a couple thousand more than the person competing because you're actually figuring out the problem in a smarter way than your competitors are offering similar bids.
Yeah. And we see that a lot, like with listing agents, just in general. Sometimes they'll list the property as land, thinking like, oh, it has to be torn down, and it doesn't. Right. Like, don't, have your experts in there. Don't just make these wild assumptions, but don't just take the selling agent's word for, oh yeah, this is a complete tear down, or, oh yeah, this definitely needs to be done. Like, have your inspector, your GC, whoever go in there, because a lot of times they're just saying that, and they're right most of the time, but they're not right every time.
I'll make one more comment. So for any people looking to buy their first property, if the listing does say this is potential teardown, usually that's going to be a rehab that's going to be too big for your first time around. So
correct. Yes.
I get that all the time. Like, oh, it's only 80,000. I'm like, yeah, but there's probably need about 180,000 to make it occupiable again. So that's usually not a good first time experience for doing an add value.
Correct.